Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, I have another Jason. Jason Pamental joins us. How you doing, man? I'm doing well. For those of us who are not familiar with your work, do you want to give a quick intro?
Mosaic and Netscape 1. I guess if that dates me enough. Um, but the last 10 years or so, I've been spending a lot of time with web typography.
And
Someone's,
I
oh,
had you
no, there we
muted
go.
for a hot second. So the way
Oh,
that I believe
thanks.
the way that you kicked this off was by telling us all how old you are. Um,
Pretty much.
which is good. No, so yeah, so Jason and I have known each other for a long time. We met at Future Insights, right, or Future Web Design.
One of those, probably
Yeah,
close to 10 years ago.
yeah, and so we were both. Or I guess I was very early on the speaking circuit. I can't remember if you were early then or if you had still been doing it for a while. Um, but we met up and had nothing professionally in common. Like Jason was off doing the like the design thing and the web typography thing, and I was down a PHP rabbit hole. And but we just got along, and so we yeah, kind of just like kept in touch through the conference circuit throughout the years. I've always really enjoyed watching your work, and now you are like like one of the leading experts on variable fonts.
Weirdly enough, yeah, that actually is it. It is my own particular rabbit hole for the last like 3 years.
Yeah, and what's exciting is that like it feels like for a long time variable fonts were a cool but someday kind of concept, right? And so every time that I saw variable fonts, I was like, those look great. I'd love to use those. Can I use them yet? And the answer was always like not quite. But it feels to me like that's less true now. Like it's starting to feel more um, like we can use them today.
We can, and I think this is really like the thing that I've been struggling to kind of get across to people is I've actually had them in production on my own site for 2 years, and
Really?
and I've had them. They've now been in production with the state of Georgia for coming up on a year. Um, so like there actually are. Oh, hey, you're in night mode.
Night
Nice.
mode.
Um, that's another. Well, we'll talk about that later. But so I've been using variable fonts for quite a while, and they're certainly now becoming much more easy to use and with lots more stuff to play with. And that's really the thing that's been the browser support's been pretty good for a couple of years now. We have at supports to handle IE11, and everything else they work great. So
That's
it's really more about availability of fonts. That's going to be the big difference.
yeah.
Now there's just really like a lot more of them.
Yeah, I mean this is super cool. So I am
Ooh, didn't get the color transform on that. Whoops,
well.
that looks terrible.
Um it's okay. It's all right. We're all learning together. So yeah, I mean like this is super fun. We've got so this is all using variable fonts then.
Yep. Yes, and so all of this, like the big display type that you see there, "Hi, I'm Jason," and the text down below it is
Uh-huh.
actually the same font.
Interesting.
So that is one from David Jonathan Ross called Roslindale, and the way that one works is it has an axis for optical size and weight, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit. But um, it allows me to get a whole lot out of like a 60K file.
Yeah.
And then I'm using another variable font from Monotype FF Meta for the UI stuff, like for the navigation.
So okay, so this all of this is only 60K.
Yep.
That's really cool. And can you do things like font subsetting so that you're only pulling in the glyphs you need?
Um, I will talk about that more in a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like there's there's lots of really cool things you can do, but there is still things about licensing that you need to be careful with. So it's probably good to kind
Gotcha.
of like tackle that stuff
Okay.
kind of in order.
Sure.
But but so I've been doing a lot of this stuff. I've been speaking about it for 3 years, almost exclusively. Um, and this year, like it really does seem like the interest has been off the charts. I've spoken in like 8 different countries on 4 continents this year. Um, and I still have trips to Berlin and Paris
Do,
in
does
the
your
next few weeks.
does your partner remember your name?
Um, we we work on that. We work on that.
You got
Um,
flashcards. um,
she has been she's been really wonderfully supportive with this. It is really so. I left the agency I was working at, running a design and development team last year to work on this full time, speaking, writing, consulting with teams, doing workshops with in-house teams and at
yeah.
conferences to teach people how to use variable fonts, to teach brand teams what they can do with them, partnering with font companies to do demos and talk to their clients. Um, I'm actually going to see the Wall Street Journal design team next on Friday.
Oh, nice.
Um, so it's really fun. I mean, I'm really enjoying this stuff. Um, looking at what it can actually do to work with like increasing performance and all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
stuff is pretty fantastic. And sometimes there's some really easy wins there, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's different all the time. Sometimes it's a design question. Sometimes it's much more about like what kind of performance gain can we get,
Sure.
because we have massive traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things can kind of come together with this, and that's actually why I like this particular rabbit hole so much.
Yeah, that's interesting. It kind of seems like a microcosm of almost, it's like a web development world within a web development world because you answer the same questions in code and you can fall down those same rabbit holes on different, you can go really deep down the web design, you can go really deep down web performance, and it sounds like we've opened that same door for fonts now. You can kind of go the same way.
Yeah, and the cool thing is it's as Chris Biscardi is putting it, it is not just web development turtles all the way down. It is web design turtles. So it's like an alternating stack.
Oh, interesting.
So because it actually totally changes how you can think about design
So it's
when
like
you
it's
have
like
the
a
full
rainbow
range.
turtle and then a regular
Yes.
turtle and a rainbow turtle and a regular
Yeah, if
turtle and it
someone
just
could come up with a rainbow turtle emoji, then we're golden. We got it.
yeah. Or maybe we just do it as corgis. We can do like
Even better.
the party corgi and a regular corgi and a party.
Yeah. Chris, we are
um,
here for you. I'm just
it's
letting you know that.
all the way. So before we get started, quick shout out. Thank you, EcoMath and Chunky Boy, for the subscriptions. I very much appreciate it. And Eco, there is a conference in Antarctica. It's a cruise to Antarctica. The
Of course there is.
the challenge with it is that it's more of like a destination experience for the speakers so that they can say they've spoken in Antarctica. So it's like more like buying a cruise than it is like speaking at a conference. But yeah, I heard, and I don't know if I haven't substantiated this, but it feels true that cruise travel to Antarctica is killing the penguins. So stop it. Um, anyways, on that like ultra depressing note, jeez. Yes. Okay. So let's do something more fun than whatever I was just talking about. Can we build something with responsive fonts?
Well, we most
With
certainly
variable
can.
variable fonts? I'm like already getting this wrong.
So, should I explain them?
Yes.
I feel like I should explain
Oh,
them.
Chris is already on it with the party corgi regular.
Nice.
Yep, excellent.
Okay. You definitely have the coolest listeners. That's for sure.
And I believe Blitzbot is on. So if somebody wants to turn that into a chat command, I am all for it. All right. So yes, please explain variable fonts. Where should we go?
All right. Um, so if you well, there's a bunch of different places to go to learn about them. I so probably like some place that a lot of people are familiar is if you go to the MDN site. I wrote a variable fonts guide there. And that's kind of got a pretty decent explanation of what they are. Now, basically, if anyone's worked with fonts before, you know that like everything's a separate file. So like we'll set aside formats, but for the moment, but everything to do like regular, bold, italic, like all of those things are separate files. The variable font format is an evolution of that sort of open type font specification that allows you to put them all in a single file.
Okay.
And what's really important to know is that this is not the browser distorting anything. These things, these axes of variation, are defined by the type designer. So some fonts will only have weight, some might have width and weight, some could have various different custom axes, because the format allows for the standard ones, which are width, weight, italic, slant, and optical size. And we can kind of look at what those things are, as well. And those things map to all standard and one new CSS attribute. And that's also really important to know how to write it well. And then the custom axes are really whatever the typeface designer wants to expose. And those can be really, really fun. And we'll
And
we'll
that
look up some really cool experiments that Mandy Michael does on CodePen, and you can see how crazy
I
they
was
get.
I was just gonna bring up Mandy Michael. I'm currently trying to talk to her to come and show me how to do that because it's so cool. Um,
Oh, I'll put in a good word for you. She's awesome. We're
yeah,
pals.
appreciate it. Yeah, I think the only thing I'm worried she's not going to accept because in this format you wouldn't be able to see that she's matched her leggings to her talk.
You could probably work that out. I feel like that is a surmountable thing. And it's true. Like she has a really pretty amazing track record for that.
Yeah,
So
let me find it's twitter.com/ Mandy. Oh, what is it?
underscore KERR.
That's right. Yeah, her work is incredible. So just go poke around her code pen for a while. It's like truly something special.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome, and she has a really really awesome dog named Jello, which is also like pretty much all you need to know.
Yeah,
Super talented developer, has a great dog.
yeah, yes, exactly. Okay, so we've got the variable fonts guide. We know that we're eventually going to go creep on Mandy Michael's code pen and look at some
Yep.
really cool things. How do we get from here to there?
So there's a bunch of open source ones. You should also pull up v-fonts.com. That's Nick Sherman's variable font sort of catalog site.
Okay,
He basically just puts up like anything that comes out, he adds it to this site. So it's not like really searchable, but you get to see all of them and play with all their axes and figure out like which ones are open source, which ones are commercial. So there's all kinds of stuff here. If you want to really like blow up your browser, just keep hitting load more, and once you get a few hundred of them on the screen, then you should pretty much be able to melt your processor
good.
anytime.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah,
But so
I feel like especially when we're live streaming, that's definitely the time to do that.
yeah. And so chat, and to those looking at home, I feel like this is something that is worth like focusing up on because look at what's happening here. We have a font, and so this is kind of what I would imagine as a font. You're looking at it, it is a lightweight font, and then
Should we focus up? Should we like? Should we write some code?
exactly start focusing. So now as we drag this slider, it's not jumping between fonts. It's a very natural movement between
Exactly.
these fonts. And so that means that like I'm not stuck with 900 or let's say this is 800. I can do like 850 if that's what I
Right.
want. And I
Yes.
have that
And
type of control here. Like I can just say like, I want 852 weight font.
yep. And what's so awesome is that it's just mapped to font weight. So when you once you've referenced it in your at font face declaration, you just say font
Whoa.
weight like 375.
Are y'all looking at this? Watch this. Look at like the F and the
Lowercase d and the
yeah.
g and the h. Yeah.
Look at that. It's like squishing or compressing. And so the idea
Yeah.
here is
So
that this kind of turns it into a headline font versus a body font or
so this one, like they're calling this the optical size axis. I'm not sure that this is the best like example of that. but I think what's important is to like to
So
know,
cool.
like you can see all of these are different. So some have width, some have weight, some have these other crazy axes, um, and and just need to know what's available, and then you can reach it with CSS. You can animate it. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So, um, yeah, okay, all right, Jason, focus.
I'm sorry. Hey,
Let's go
look,
make
but
something.
look how cool these are. I could
I
sit. All
know
right,
you can get kind of
go.
like lost for days with it.
You really can. Okay, so I'm done. I'm done playing with
All
these
right.
sliders. I want to do something else.
So now go back over to um, my site,
Here.
and you're a good doobie and you're in Firefox, right?
No.
Mike, no, I thought that was Firefox. I was just looking at
No.
your Chrome.
No, this is
Um,
Chrome.
Oh, so we would need
all
to
right.
add code.
That's what's
that right?
happening. Well, maybe. I don't know what we're doing
So
right now.
okay, copy this URL. You do have Firefox, right?
I certainly hope so.
All right. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not because I'm bashing on Google or anything. It's actually because Jen Simmons is like a hero to all of us web developers and has pushed for the development of some amazing font tools that are part of the dev tools. So highlight the that heading up there,
I clicked a button. What did I do?
the H1.
Here, no. Yes, I know I'm bad. Okay. All right.
All right. So highlight that and right click to inspect it. Now, over there to the right in the dev tools, click on fonts. This is the magic. So you'll see it tells you what font is used,
Oh
and
my.
it gives you.
Wow.
Okay, now leave it set on the heavier weight. Now move optical size. Now you see there's two things that are happening here. It's getting wider, but it's also decreasing the contrast between the strokes. It's sort of thickening up the thin parts. So that way, when it's displayed at a physically smaller size, it still kind of holds together. It doesn't sort of fall apart. But when it's really big, you get all those beautiful fine details.
Okay, yeah. So to like restate that, this if we look at like the width of this N and I decrease the optical size, it like thins out a little bit.
So the optical size value is actually, it's almost the inverse of that. The optical size value is supposed to correspond to either the point or the pixel size that it's being set at, so that it should be kind of coarser or thicker with the lower that value is. And in this case, it also makes it wider.
Yeah.
And so that makes it more like what is there for the body copy. And so that kind of helps make it more useful across a broader range of sizes.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that has been done in metal type for like 400 years.
Okay.
And now we can actually do that with digital type to make it that much more useful at big and little sizes.
Oh, that's super cool.
And the browser is supposed, like the browsers basically handle that automatically.
Yeah.
So font optical sizing is by default set to auto. So it will adjust it automatically, but then you can kind of force the value yourself if you want to using CSS.
That's really cool. Okay.
It is.
So
All right. So, oh, one other thing. Now check on that changes tab next to fonts. Everything that you just did gets captured over here.
oh boy, I have not looked
Yeah,
at Firefox
I mean, like
in a
this is
while.
like some seriously good DevTool stuff that is really really good. Yes, and as far as browser support goes, it is everything, pretty much everything in common use shipping right now. Edge, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, Mac, Windows, Android, iOS. It's not in IE11, but you can use @supports to gate it so that you only serve the variable fonts to browsers that get it. And then there's like some of like Opera
Wow.
Mobile and Opera Mini, nobody gets that. UC and Baidu are ones that won't support it, but you know, unless your market is lower cost Android handsets in Asia,
Mm-hmm.
which is like sort of generally what we're talking about with those. Um, Everywhere else, it's going to be great. So like
And
87%, something like that.
so what you're, but if you use the at supports directive,
Yep.
then you're not gonna like break Baidu.
Right.
You're just gonna,
Right.
you just
So,
won't have
and
variable
what I'll
fonts.
typically do, and this is actually a nice way to work variable fonts into an existing project, leave your existing typography alone,
Uh-huh.
add an at supports block to the end of your CSS, and just redeclare your font families there, pointing
Okay.
to the new asset, and you won't get a double download. It will only ever download the fonts that browser can support.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
And if it does support
great.
variable fonts, it doesn't download the font outside of the declaration.
Correct.
Cool.
Yes.
Very
So,
cool.
and you can test that with the network tab on your DevTools. As soon you catch all of your font family declarations, and then you can see which one gets downloaded.
Yeah. And thanks for the reminder on the can I use, Nikki. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is great. I'm now like, I got itchy fingers. I want to write some code.
All right. So we can flip back over to your Chrome browser if you want.
I can use Firefox. I don't mind. I'm not opposed. I honestly, it's inertia at this point. I'm like, oh, that's set as my default, and it's where all my bookmarks are. So I guess that's where I'll stay.
So
Right.
we would need to add code. Is that right?
So you can. It might be quickest to copy some stuff out of CodePen or just work in CodePen from the one that I sent you.
Sure.
And that's kind of available for anyone to play around if they
You
look
hackers,
up
you
on-
you dirty hackers.
Who's hacking? Nobody's
Yes.
hacking. All right, so here's a code pen that we're going to play with. And this is some fonts. And now these are all different variable fonts.
There's 3 different variable fonts that I've pulled in there. There's Plex Sans from IBM, which is open source. You can get that on GitHub. And there's also Anstelvar, also on GitHub. Anstelvar is fun to play with, but I would not say that is one I would want to put in production. It's very experimental, and it has like 47,000 axes in it, and you won't really know what most of them do. So it's nice to showcase some things.
Okay.
And then Recursive is one that Google is releasing with Arrow fonts. Steven Nixon is a great designer. That's the one at the end there, and we can kind of play around with that a little bit, so that people can see like how much fun you can have with that. That one has a weight axis. It has separate italic and slant, and we'll see what that means. It has an expressiveness axis, which is really cool, and it can also be either monospace or proportional. So you can use it like as your code font and also for other stuff, which is kind of neat.
So here's the CodePen link again. It's in the chat. Grab it off of the Twitch chat if you're there. So let's play. What do we do?
Okay, so first let's look at a couple of the differences in the @font face declaration right there.
Okay.
So start off with the source. You'll notice there's two links for the URL in there, and it's the same URL, but the syntax is changing. So that's why I have it in here twice. The first one, where the format says WAF2 space supports space variations. That is there because we also have color fonts coming along, and so what they've decided to do in the W3C is to say, all right, so it's WAF2, we know that. Now what other things does it support? And that's how you'll be able to declare more than one. So it might be a color variable font. So it might say supports color space variations.
Okay. And so the idea then, just to make sure I understand this, you're saying that like I would be able to write format WAF2 supports color, and like this would be valid. So if I have a color font, I can support color. If it supports both color and variations, I would write
just list both.
Color and variations. And if later something like animated becomes supported, I would just add that.
Right.
Okay.
And so both, like, those are both real things. Like, there are color fonts available. It's still, kind of experimental support. There's much better support for variable fonts. Um, the reason I have that one listed first is that is the current version of the spec, but no browser implements it yet. So the way at FontFace
Okay.
works is the browser stops looking as soon as it hits one that it knows. So
As
we
the
put that one
cascade.
first,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's sort of, it's weird
Well, it's like
because, like,
the
this
inverse
is
of the
actually the
cascade.
inverse.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it stops looking as soon as it hits one that it understands.
Okay.
It doesn't understand this yet, so it moves on to the next one. WAF2 dash variations. It's the same file. We're just giving it a format hint that it knows what to do with. All the browsers that support variable fonts understand that notation.
Gotcha.
So that's why we want to specify that. Then going down below, you see font stretch equates to width. If there's a width axis, you tell it a low and a high end, and they're supposed to be expressed as percentages. The thing that you have to bear in mind is there are a lot of type designers that are experimenting with stuff, and the numbers might be kind of crazy. It might be 3 and 5. It could be 100 and 900.
Percent.
It's supposed to be like 100 is 100%. That's your normal width, and then you go up and down from there.
Okay.
That's how the OpenType spec reads. Your mileage will vary.
So so it's kind of like we're still in the formative phase of this where people haven't really settled on standards yet.
Well, no, the standard's settled. People
the spec
haven't settled on following them. That's the difference. So in any event, whatever the numbers are, you can use them with font stretch. We're supplying the low and the high end here to tell the browser what are the low and high end values. And if somebody then in your CSS supplies a lower number, it will clamp to the 85 in this case, or a higher number, it will clamp to 100. So that way everything will behave as it should without any artificial distortion.
And so the idea is that, like, and the reason you would clamp is that if I am a font designer, I've only designed down to 85% width, and I haven't designed anything wider than 100% width. So this is like a safety measure to say you're not going outside the parameters of what this font is designed to handle.
Right. And really there's not really any way to force it to do that. Where the browsers get a little funky sometimes is they will try and synthesize something if you haven't provided any guardrails. The intent of the format is to not let that happen.
Okay.
But we're just trying to give some hints here. So you can see we do the same thing with font weight. What's the lowest weight range and what weight value and what's the highest?
Okay.
And technically there would also be stuff that we would do under font style, and you can see that with the Roboto variable font down below. That is the slant axis, which is different than italic. Slant is just an angle, and we're just supplying degrees here. So it could be anything between 0 and 12.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. And then italic is when usually you have an angle and different characters. Like
right.
The shapes of the letters will change a little bit when in italics, most of the time.
Yep. That's cool. Okay. That's so I kind of want to play with this one and see, because I have questions, but I think we're going to cover those.
Yeah, we will get to that. And then, so I skipped adding some of that stuff for Amstelvar. If you don't define those things, the browsers are going to kind of ignore it. It's fine. You can still do stuff. You just don't get the guardrails. And recursive, I think, is the last one that I added. That's the one from Google. And so I added the weight range in there because I think that's the only one. Like, if you... font style is weird because it actually is supposed to govern both italic and slant. Like, this is an area where the W3C, I think, still needs to get something sorted out. I think we actually need a new attribute.
Okay.
I think we need font style and then font slant and like separate those two things. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So once we have those things defined, we've given them a font family name. We can now reference that in our CSS. And now you can, like, down here, you can start to see some of these things in action, where we like define the body font and then set up some other classes and stuff like that.
Yeah. So okay. So we're setting the body font is Plex, and then we're setting a font stretch. But if I just mess with this, so I think that's I
It
set
was
it to
I think
80,
well,
but
it's actually going to display it at 85. That's
right.
because we gave it the low end value.
So if I set it to like 40 or whatever, that's not going to change. But
Right.
if I set it to
See how it didn't do
90,
anything there. Yep.
here, let
There
me
you go.
pull this smaller actually so we can see a little more easily. So I set it to 90, or I'll set it to 100. Okay, so we see that move. If I set it to 85, which is our okay, that didn't move, or that moved. Set it to 80, nothing happens.
Right.
Yeah, that's super cool. Um, that is really handy. I like, and it's cool too because it means that, like, well, I don't know. I see that as potentially being a challenge for like future CSS maintainers, but it's kind of nice that you're providing the guardrails so that
Well, so you should be seeing these things together. So you should see the at font face declaration, which kind of gives you the hints here. I mean, that's the thing is like these fonts need documentation,
right.
and it's like it's not, and that's kind of a difference here with these like this single font versus getting separate files that are named 100, 200, 300, 400. Those are like they're all named very clearly. Like this is the compressed bold, whatever, and that this just needs a little bit of documentation. So that's what the at font face stuff does for us. Is it kind of tells you
Gotcha.
where to go with that. Now, I want to point out like there is a different way to specify these things, but for font stretch and font weight, you don't want to use it. But let's show them what it is.
Okay.
So add a line down below font weight. So like the important thing is font stretch and font weight are supported everywhere. So all the browsers that support this stuff will let you use those attributes and they behave properly. And this is the important thing is like you have font weight 375 in there. If the variable font doesn't load and it falls back to Helvetica, it's going to bump that automatically to 400 and just show the regular weight of Helvetica.
Nice. Okay.
So this is the cascade working the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
So so there's still, it's almost effectively like you still have semantic value in your CSS, even if the variable font doesn't load. Now, if instead we were to use font variation settings, and then like single quote WGHT, and then outside that space 200. See what happened there?
Yeah.
It's synthesizing that lower weight in this case, because I think that might even be below the weight range that it normally supports. No, it goes 100 to 700. So that's still a valid range, but like change that to like 50. See how it got even lighter?
Mm-hmm.
That's lighter than it should be, because now it's actually by using font variation settings, you take away the guardrails.
Did it actually do that? Because let's see. I don't see a difference.
It may be hard to tell at that point.
Yeah, let's clamp it to 500, like something pretty.
Right.
Okay. So we're clamped to
that should have totally changed.
So it should be here, but now it'll override.
Yep.
I see. So basically
you lose
there
you
is
lose the guardrails, it messes with your specificity, and it like totally breaks if your variable font doesn't load. Font variation settings is meaningless to a browser that doesn't understand it.
Yep.
So with no variable font, then font variation settings does nothing. So that's why like I really want people to understand like for these supported attributes, you really want to use those supported attributes. For like font style, if you're using oblique, then it's great. If you have some combination of oblique and italic or italic, we have to use font variation settings. And you'll also see when we get into recursive that we're using custom axes and you have to treat those differently.
Okay.
And then I don't know. Let's just make some other stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's only so much that's fun to like explain without actually making something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Chris is asking in the chat that as a general guideline, we should only use font variation settings if there's no other way to set that value.
Right.
Perfect.
So, and, it's intentional. It's intended to use font variation settings for all the custom axes. That's the only way that you can set those. But we do have these sort of registered ones that map to existing CSS. Of those, font optical sizing works automatically, so you don't really have to touch that. But that is an attribute now, font optical sizing, and then just set it to auto, which is the default.
Okay.
Or you can turn it off. And then font weight and font width are supported across the board.
Cool. Very cool. So let's play with, you said that Amstelvar has a bunch of like weird stuff.
Yes.
So
And
let's
so if
do
you-
that.
Yeah.
Let's get weird.
All right, so if you want to see what all the axes are, this is again where those browser tools come in handy. If you're in Firefox, you can just right click on that, inspect one of those elements, and lo and behold,
Wow.
there's a whole buttload of font axes there.
I think that's a learn with Jason first. Somebody used buttload in a sentence.
I was trying to figure out where to go with that. I mean, I figured it was sort of okay. I could maybe go a little coarser than that, but I didn't really know what your Twitch rating was for this.
I'm fully on board with it. I love it. No, I am a big fan of like awkwardly rephrase things to avoid swearing. That's like a core value on this show. So
Good.
I mean, we still swear a shitload, but
Okay, good. Well, I don't want to fuck with your PG rating or anything. So.
I mean, I had Sarah Bier on this
like,
show.
Sidebar, I have never known Jason Lengsdorf to be PG rated ever.
Yeah. So, all right. I just want to start pulling around on these different values and see what happens. So we can set regular weight, width, okay, optical size, all cool.
While you're messing with that, I will say that Bond Schrift on Windows 10 installed with the OS is a variable font. It has width and weight axes. And Chris, we have so many more fucks to give on this. I promise you, we'll get there. I kind of like having the chat stuff on the bottom there.
It's fun,
It's
isn't
gonna
it?
get me in trouble, I'm sure. And basically, San Francisco is a variable font, but we can't really do anything with that. Like, under the hood, that's basically how it's built. But you can't really do much with that yet. There are some of us who have lobbied the browser vendors, and maybe we need to do this a lot more, that like if we had a good serif and a sans serif variable font that happened to ship with all these browsers, we could have really, really, really good stuff that we could have as fallbacks. And it's actually, Google has not been secretly working on this stuff. They're actually working on it pretty much out in the open. I wrote about their new web font API a few weeks ago. They introduced that at A-Type I in Tokyo back in September. And I have another CodePen that has some of the demo stuff on it, and I've got a whole newsletter that I devoted to documenting that. So you can play around with variable fonts with the new beta version of the Google Fonts API.
Oh man, are you seeing these ridiculous things that I'm getting? I don't like.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so many. There's so many settings. I can totally see why you're saying like this is not a safe font to just go like throw out there.
But like what some of these things are, like like the YT, like up at the just to the top there, YTDE, that's descenders. So if you play with that one, see how it's like
Whoop,
playing with the height
whoop,
or depth of the
whoop,
descenders?
whoop.
So you can play around with ascenders and descenders to stack copy closer together, and it looks really, really awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, not with the shit that you're doing right now, but
No, this is not working out well for me. I thought, oh, look at that. There we go. That's fun.
yeah. So like you can do a lot of really cool stuff to
Still
kind
can't
of
figure out which thing
yeah.
I broke that did like this goofy thing.
You fix it by hitting reload, but you know whatever.
That's fair. All right, let's reload it. Okay, fair. All right, I've broken it. Get in here.
So yeah, I wanted to use Amstelvar just to show you the differences with the optical sizing. Like
Mhm.
that's a really easy way to see it there. You have much more exaggerated thick and thins in this one than you have in the one below it where it's been forced to off. Jason's not going to show that to you though, so
Where do
whatever.
I where?
Scroll down just a little bit in the there. See how this the crossbar and the T, the capital T, is so much thicker across the top, and scroll up a little bit and see how it's thinner on this one.
Yep.
That's an example of the optical sizing. As the text gets bigger, it should have more of those fine details. So think of that as like your headline text, and then when you have it at a smaller size, the optical sizing should thicken those things up so it's still readable.
Good.
That's the idea.
I'm appreciating the shade coming from Sia. She's like, "You've successfully made a terrible font. Thanks. Thanks." That's what I was going
Well,
for.
so like this, this is the heart of why some type designers are not super excited about this. And like this particular one is very deliberately like wide open. This has basically expert controls. And then a lot of these are real, like what you'll see most, especially on Google's offering, there'll be one axis, probably just weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more everybody gets used to it, and maybe they'll introduce like width and weight, and then you can do even more with that. But not everybody is going to be ready to dive in and use these things really well.
Yeah, and I mean, as we just witnessed, I had too many knobs, and
Yes.
I managed to like back myself into a weird corner, and so I think there's a like the obvious solution is like trust the type designers and just don't add all these custom settings, and that is kind of a nice thing about variable fonts is that by default they use all the defaults.
Right, and that's and it's the other thing that you don't see in this one, but actually, in the window with the text, just like scroll up a little bit to one of the other bits of text. So like code behaving badly, highlight that. If you inspect that one, you also have something called named instances. So right there under instance, see how you have all of those things there? This is basically what did the type designer have in mind when they chose one of these things. So if you do that and choose that instance, it pops the sliders to those points along those axes.
That's very cool.
So it gives you an idea of like what did they have in mind.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to go by that, but these named instances will show up when you use this font installed on your desktop, and you're using Keynote or whatever, Word. Like it works in all the other applications with those drop down options.
Yeah.
And then some apps like the new version of Sketch, latest releases of the last few releases actually of Illustrator and Photoshop support variable fonts. Like it's getting there on desktop, but the key to being able to use them now in any application is if they have the named instances set up, then you have all of that stuff available to you.
So when we go to use these, so like if I want to just use this, let's go over here. We've got my rubato is here, and so I think you're just setting these to something like that, rubato slanted. So if I go in here and I say I want to use the named one. I want to set this to be like semi-bold condensed. Can I, like, would I just add it here, like semi-bold condensed?
Well, no. Like that's the problem is like we don't actually have any way to reach those in CSS yet.
Oh,
Like they're like we're trying to work it out.
Sure.
I mean, like I'm not on the CSS working group, but like I do certainly comment a lot on things there. They're trying to figure that out. But for the moment, what you can do when you do select that, it's going to give you the values, and then you can decide to just supply them in your font stretch and font weight. So if you had like
so if I
picked
go
one of those
here and then I
Yep.
choose this and then I go to changes, it just shows me where I should be and I can go drop that in.
Yep.
So that is a like Firefox dependent thing because I don't think this changes dialogue, or I think
Well, it
Chrome
changes
does
in
have it,
fonts.
but it's like very odd, and we would
Well,
only be
and
able to
you-
see it if we had this fonts inspector.
Right. Yeah, you need the fonts inspector.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, because we're all smart, capable, and responsible web developers, we have multiple browsers anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So working with variable fonts, you're definitely going to have an easier time with this tool.
In Firefox.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I will say, like, I know the Edge team is really excited about this. I think I'm supposed to be talking to Stephanie from the DevTools team in Berlin when I'm over there next week. I can't even follow all the words.
Oh, I just
there.
Chris is just making fun of you because you're like, because we're all responsible web developers. He's like, you're making a lot of assumptions. Which is good. That's the.
I'm trying to decide what things I could say that would like blow up the comments even more, but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't.
Oh yeah, just make big sweeping assertions about really anything. I think a good one is
Basically it won't work if you like React. How's that? Does that shut up enough of a firestorm?
yeah, that's gonna be good. That's what I was really hoping to do is see
Okay,
if we can
cool.
get Twitter ignited.
All right.
Okay, so let's what do we do next? What's you had another font down here, and you said something about arrows, and I have no idea what that means.
Oh,
so I would
no, that's the name of the foundry.
Oh, okay.
Steven Nixon's the designer.
Okay.
And he's like really super awesome. So, yeah, inspect one of those, and let's show you what recursive can do, because it's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, we're just getting so much shade. There's so much snark in the chat today. All right, so I've got one of these. We are looking at here. We've got a bunch of named options, so that's very cool.
Yeah, don't worry about that stuff. Let's have fun with
No.
sliders.
Let's pull the sliders. All right.
Should we focus up? Should we write some code?
We never lost focus. So yeah. All right. Just checking in.
All right, now that went away. So first off, you can look, everybody needs a good code font for your editors.
Yes.
So you can just pop the proportion one over and turns it into a monospace.
Oh, so this is not monospace.
Right? That's
This is-
proportional. There's your monospace.
Excellent.
You can also get super expressive with it. So if you drag that one around,
Oh well, now it's got added. So it's like this
Yeah,
is
then it's got
this is
attitude.
business recursive. This is weekend recursive.
right? This brings the party to the back.
This is recursive with a mullet. That is, wow. That really gets very sassy.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, like, you should make it a little bit bigger so people can really see what's going on.
All right, yeah, let's do that. Make
mean-
it bigger. Okay. So let's watch the sass. So let's go to expression. Okay. Enhance.
So it just kind of messes with the stroke
Yeah.
contrast and makes everything a little curvier and everything. And then you also have this is slanted. It's set at an angle.
Right. And so I can take that down.
Yep, and you can move that up
I
or down.
turned it up. Okay, so there's no slant, but we can still make it sassy.
Yep.
It's less sassy, but
Right. And scroll down again a little bit more, and you should see
Yeah. Sorry.
you should see the italic axis too. So you can set that.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
that's what I mean about, like, those are the different letter forms. And in this case, it's been sort of decoupled from setting the angle. So you can change the
Fascinating.
forms, the letters, and leave it upright, or you can then also slant it.
That's wild. Okay. So this is actually something I was curious about because as we were talking about the difference between italics and slant, I was wondering if when you turned on the slant, let me turn down the SAS. I was curious about whether it was going to account for things like the direction of the top of the letters, or if it was just literally like, doing a skew. And this is so. I mean, it is skewing, but it looks like it's accounting for that in the
Right. I mean, this is designed. Like, it's not
Right.
just like doing like a parallelogram filter in like a graphics app. I mean,
Sure.
it is like, this is exactly what the type designer had in mind in doing this.
Yeah.
And so, like, typically you see that like a slant axis, like if you see a typeface called an oblique, usually that is just a slanted sans serif, whereas most serif typefaces would just go with a regular, like a regular italic, where it couples those things together. But now, like, I've seen a couple different type designers separate them this way. I feel like we might see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I love this as a general idea because like if you look at something like so like my editor font is operator mono, right? But in order to use that, I need to have like 4 weights of operator mono because I need regular bold, italic, and bold italic. And so that's 4 separate font files
Right.
in order
Holy
to load
buckets,
that.
did that just work?
But with this, what we're seeing is now we've got a single font where I can go from, like, if I turn this all down and I go here, okay, so maybe this is my font for code in the editor, but then I want my comments to be like the kind of cursive feel like operator mono
Right.
has. Then I just turn this up, turn this up, turn this up, and now I've got like a cursive version of that font. So that how cool is that? That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
what's
like,
up,
all
Bobby?
of that-
Bobby Table just subscribed. Thank you very much.
So, like, that's all of the stuff that you could do, just with that one asset, just using it in a code environment. But
Yeah.
you could also, like, that would be kind of an interesting way to use this for your body copy. You can handle like all your like regular bold italic, all that kind of thing, just like body copy on your website. And then for headings, turn up the SAS and like crank up the weight.
Yeah.
It's like, so you could get some real differentiation in the typography of a site just with that one file.
Yep.
And I think that's what's, really pretty interesting to me about the possibilities is typically what I'm seeing with the good variable fonts is that one file with all of this stuff is going to be roughly the same size as 3 or 4 individual font files.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see a performance gain in most cases,
Yeah.
as long as you're getting it in the WAF2 format with the most compression, and then you'll have fewer HTTP requests and you'll have a greater expressive range that you get out of this. You can do so much more.
Absolutely. And this is like, it's starting to become more apparent what the advantages are of this, because something that has been difficult to understand given my 0 minutes of research that I've done is that when you look at a variable
Professional
font,
preparation right there.
yeah, that's how I roll. Like, that's the whole shtick of this show, is that I show up with literally no preparation. But I think it's really cool that like what you're showing here is that if I want to have a single font with a ton of different weights, what I've traditionally done is had to load a bunch of different things into my site.
Right.
So being able to have that level of flexibility with a single font file is, that's super powerful.
Yeah.
And it starts to address another problem that I've seen, which is like, I mean, it doesn't fully eliminate the flash of of invisible text or the flash of unstyled text, but it decreases the weighting. It it's instead of having to download 4 files before my site can render properly,
Right.
it's 1. So this is like very, very cool stuff. I'm very into it. So what do you want to look at next?
Well, trying to think like what a good test would be to like show people this stuff and play around with it. I don't know, like if anybody has like something they want to see us play with, like stick it in the chat there. But I think what's kind of interesting if you want to go. Actually, why don't you just go back to my um, my profile? No, on CodePen. Just click on my name there at the top and like open that up and go to the all pens.
All pens.
And scroll down a little bit. So, I mean, I have like a ton of different things that people can play with here. But I thought would be kind of cool is if you see the Odyssey Book 1 there.
Yeah.
That one is the one using the Google Fonts API. And then there's like a whole bunch of text there. So we could kind of play around with that.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. And then it looks like Chris wants to jump into those overlays as well.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
So yeah, let's take a look here. So we have, can I make this bigger? Yes, I can.
Yep.
So we're pulling in Heptaslab. So tell me about how the Google Fonts weight stuff works.
So, first off, if you go to rwt.io/typography tips, which is like the tips link on the menu.
That's easier.
Yeah. And scroll down just a little bit. Yeah, keep going. There it is. So variable fonts, the new Google Fonts API. That documents all of this stuff.
Excellent.
So check that out. And it links to this same CodePen, and it kind of explains how all of this works.
Cool.
The whole 4-letter thing, just so everybody knows why that silliness exists, it is because the internals of the font actually has a whole slew of other things going on. It's actually just that's how the font database tables are organized. So that's actually
4-letter
the history
caps
of that. So the standard axes are all lowercase.
Uh-huh.
They're all 4 letters, and then the custom axes are all uppercase. And that's kind of how you can quickly tell the difference. One of the things that people might not realize is there's like 15 or more different tables inside a font. It's actually like a little database-driven piece of software. There's actually a shitload of stuff going on in there. So that's kind of the backstory. I have no idea like why that can't change, but probably because like reasons or some shit like that. So that's what we're stuck with. So going back to the Google Fonts API, you've got the name with the plus sign for the spaces, just like it's always been.
Yep.
But then when you get into showcasing how these things would work to get a weight range, then you can see here, like you have the weight axis named, and then there's an @ and then 400 semicolon 700 says like this is the range that I like want with this.
Okay.
And those values are all supplied by Google. This is just how we're calling for them.
Okay.
And then you can see the one that your cursor's next to right now for Roboto is how you would be getting italic and weight. So you're getting both upright and italic. That's why you see the 0 and the 1. It's actually allowing you to get all of those things together. It's a little bit convoluted.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I'm not 100% clear on what's happening. So
I'm
pulling
100% clear that I can copy and paste things really well. I'm not entirely clear because like literally like the documentation is not it is lacking at this point. That that's why I have a lot of things for people to just copy and paste.
Oh, okay.
So
I think I understand what's happening. So when you include Roboto, you have like the standard upright, like what you would consider body text version of it. And then we include the italic variant.
yep.
And then we're specifying that we want the weight. And then
The 0 is italics off.
So
the
this
1
is
is italics on.
So it's kind of like programming. Like the 0th index would be the body font. The 1 would be the italic version. And so we're saying for the body font, bring in weight 100. For the italics fonts, bring in 100 to 700. Is that right?
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I have no idea if any of that's accurate. This is me interpreting it.
So there was one brief post on a code pen from one of the engineers. And then I wrote this to try and like make it a little bit more plain English and give people more examples to play with. Where you have both upright and italic available, if you follow that line for Crimson Pro right there where your cursor is, that will get you the full weight range, both italic and upright, with a single request. And that's what we're using in that code pen.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So this seems good. So this is the body style, and this is italic style.
Yeah. So actually, the ones we were looking at above, where if you don't have the 2 dots between things to get a range, that's only getting you single weights. It's coming back to me a little bit now.
I got you.
So what that was doing up above was getting you upright and italic at the 100 weight, but only italic at the 700 weight.
Okay.
Here we're getting the range on and off.
And so we would be able to then turn these on in if we load it like this, then we can use the variable fonts inspector to like toggle the buttons. Okay.
Right. So that gets us the whole thing. And then Heptaslab is the one we were just using with a weight range for the heading.
Cool. And so if we look at, let's see, we bring in.
So we've got Heptaslab with a weight range of 100 to 900. And then we have Crimson Pro that's getting the italic and the weight axis 200 to 900, which is what they have available for that.
What is display swap?
So display swap is a way to trigger FOUT automatically, which is generally speaking what you want to do.
Can you say what you just said again, but use words that I've heard before? What did you just say?
All right. So this actually has nothing to do with variable fonts. This is something that's been supported now for a little while. And it is the thing that tells the browser to swap the font immediately. And that will sort of force it to display the content right away in the fallback font and then swap for the web font once it loads.
Okay. And then you said you called that a thing. What was the...
Well, it's we're forcing FOUT, flash of unstyled text.
Okay. You said that, and I was like, what was that word that just happened?
Yeah. So, and this is actually now enabled by default with Google Font requests.
Okay, so we wouldn't even need to include this; it would just happen.
Yeah. Well, except like right now, when you're writing this yourself, then you might want to. You don't have to include that. I think it's better practice because it gets the content on screen.
Got it.
That does mean things will reflow if you don't then also do things to manage that, but that's like a whole other thing for us to talk about, using like Font Face Observer or some other way to target the fallback CSS and make sure things don't reflow.
And so what I just did is I made it slow. And so what I'm hoping happens, I think CodePen might break this. What I'm hoping is that we can actually see the unstyled text. But CodePen might get the... Where's the elevator music?
Background music. It
preloaded our resources for us. That's fine. So late on the draw today. That's fine. We still appreciate.
We're still holding. Okay.
Okay.
So there's
anyways,
some,
that's not what we're
things that we
talking
can
about today.
Right. So there's stuff you can like take a look at there where in the body copy, tell me, oh Muse, you can see it gets its italics, it gets its bold, like it's doing stuff with just regular old HTML. And so you can
What?
see like what I did. I put font synthesis none in there so that at least Safari and Firefox won't fake it. And we can be more sure that it's actually working the way it's supposed to work.
Got it. So font synthesis would be like the browser just taking a font file that doesn't support italic and it just like does its like
It
and kind of
artificially
forces it.
slants it. Yeah. Browsers have been doing that for a long time, and it was only recently that I learned that you could tell it not to,
Cool.
which is one of my favorite things to do now. Because I like if the bold isn't there, I don't want to have a fake bold, because I know that it doesn't look as good.
I have noticed that and I haven't liked it and I didn't realize that I had a control. So that is a great little pro tip. So yeah, that's super cool. So something that I keep seeing and that I would love to, oh, actually, hold on. I want to go back and look at this, this overlay thing because I think, there were requests. So I want to take a look at this. And did everybody see that? That was the flash of unstyled text.
Yep.
I can't make it happen again. So if you didn't see it, rewind.
Much of this is inspired by Una Kravitz. So if you want to learn about CSS blend modes and things like that, go check out some of the things that she's done, and just marvel at it because it's just kind of amazing.
Yeah, Una is the best. She does incredible things.
Buckets, did that just work?
So definitely go check out her work.
So the stuff that's going on there is it's using CSS to, and like that's recursive there, cranked over to SAS mode with a heavy weight. And it's using a CSS blend mode to kind of create like this darkening multiplier effect on there. And like your mileage varies. Like I have it fairly carefully placed in the middle of the photo there, so where I know it's going to work out well. But there's like three or four different examples on this page. And what's really kind of cool, you can use it to mask text, or to like highlight stuff. So if you scroll down, there's a couple other ones there that are kind of neat too.
Oh, I didn't realize there was more. Okay, cool. Very cool. Let's. So in this one, you're using like the overlay, or what blending mode are you using? I guess I can just look.
Hang on a second. It's been a while since I looked at that. Let's see, which one is that? That's the hero image one. The title. There we go. That's it. That's the one right there. You just passed it. Go back. You're not listening to me.
I'm listening.
So
here we go. Mixed blend mode. That was what I was looking for.
Yep. And so like if you look, like it's basically playing with the color of the text, the opacity of it, and then the blend mode. And those are the things that are going to alter that. So if you like go up to the color and like change that to like 0.25 for the alpha. See how that sort of like kind of changed things a little bit? Or if you change the color values dramatically, that's a very light color.
Yeah, and these are cool because they do different, like each of these is like if you go into Photoshop or Sketch or Figma, you can change the blend mode of a layer, and that's a good way to learn about how these work. But they're all very, very cool. So we've got difference, and then if I make this like very red, it's like it looks more laid in than if you do it as like, because I think if we do normal, it'll just look like kind of gray, right? And that's fine, but it's more fun if you do something like that.
Right. Well, and what's cool about that is it will then always provide contrast. So even if you like move that around some, then it's like still.
Let's go left.
Yeah, go left a little bit. See how like when it's over the tree, it just inverts it. So it is really like looking at the difference and you'll always get the text to be generally at least seeable. Like, may not be readable very much, but
Yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
still
it's
make it out.
like
And
it works.
and that's the thing that I kind of like about this is a trick that you could put into a CMS. Like, you have your image upload, have your text, build in a couple of controls to play with, and like you could create these effects on your site with every blog post and just like fuck with it and have a good time, and
Yeah,
not have to write custom code every time.
yeah.
And you're
And
not
it's
doing
it's
anything extra.
really powerful stuff. And I like that you've done the cutouts here too, which is pretty cool. Like, you can use fonts as a masking for an image, which is pretty
Yeah.
great.
And
Um,
like if you were to use like a super heavy typeface, if you put it in all caps, um, or like David Jonathan Ross had one that he created called Build for Font of the Month Club. That one, um, like you could have a much more densely packed letters, so you'd see more of the photo,
mhm.
and that way, like you could kind of use it to still know what the photo is all about, but still have it be letter forms.
Yeah, so we can kind of pull it together
Right.
like this, make it kind of tight, and then blow that up a bit, play with the
Yep.
line height, and like you just start getting toward
Yeah.
just some. It's really cool what you can do with this kind of stuff. Like when I used to do graphic design, this was a go-to move, but it wasn't possible on the web. So it's really cool to be able to do this. Like this maybe isn't the best font for it, but like there are some really cool approaches to playing with this type of like photos in text where you can pull
Yeah.
stuff in, and I really love that.
Well, this is so like there's a couple things that we've touched on, but I think are really worth connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about only loading like two weights of a font,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, a lot of people will tell you that's good typography, but that's good performance. It's not good typography. Good typography is actually using the full range of the typeface to be really expressive and say what you're really trying to say. This lets us do that because we have that full range. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is, sometimes it's about making it harder. Sometimes you do want to challenge people and slow them down and force them to like make out what this thing says.
Mm-hmm.
And the act of doing that makes it more memorable and a little bit more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't want to put people off. You don't want to set the whole body copy that way, but making somebody work a little bit to read a title, it's not going to kill anybody. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's going to cause anybody to leave because there's something interesting going on there. It kind of draws you in a little bit. And I think that's sort of the other half of what good typography is all about.
Yeah,
And that's where
I would agree with that. What's cool about this too is I think that when you start thinking about the transition of like magazines as a primary medium for written word to the internet, we lost something there for a while where typography was limited to just what you could do with system fonts. And then we got custom fonts, and that was super exciting. I remember when that got introduced, and I was like, wow, I can do like not Helvetica for everything. And then, it has been getting progressively more powerful. And so as these CSS blend modes have come into play, as the rest of things are really starting to catch up with being able to clip with CSS, now we're getting back to what I would consider close to feature parity, because I've seen you can flow text around differently shaped images now. You can do really cool things with like this here, where you're punching out of an image as opposed to having to somehow make that text sit on top of the image.
Right.
Just really cool, powerful things that open up a lot of typographic opportunities that were previously limited to just what you could do in text or like print. So I'm very excited
It's
about that.
Yeah, and I actually, so that CSS shape outside thing where you can use an image and it maps the shape is the transparency,
Yeah.
and that's really cool. I proposed a new feature for CSS actually, to do that with lines of text.
Cool.
So if you could say like wrap it around the line box, that would look kind of cool. If you flip over to my site again, and go back to just back up to the tip page and then scroll up to the top. Go to the latest one.
Here?
I think what the web wants. Click on that one. There we go.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I'm just using a CSS shape with a polygon to
Mm-hmm.
wrap the text around the title, but that's kind of that's the effect
Yeah.
that I'd like to be able to get.
That's super cool. Yeah, and I think like this is the sort of thing that you really want, because if you look at magazine layouts,
Yeah.
you can just play with like you're not just telling stories with the words you're writing, you're telling stories with the way the words are written on the page. And every once in a while you see something amazing like that and it's done on the web and you're like, wow, that's so cool. And then you learn that it's this incredibly intense manual process. And so
Right.
being able to do this with more of the platform's built-in features, like saying like, yeah, I want this image to be a knockout with like, you know, it's a circular image, but I want that to control how the text flows. That sort of stuff is really going to make a big difference. I think there's so much power. But yeah, I feel like I don't know. I'm stoked now. I want to go play with this.
Well, this is like magazine publishers and newspapers could do the most mind-blowing things with these.
Absolutely.
You know, if you look at a really great a really great magazine cover, for
Mhm.
example, you probably could count 8 to 10 or more weights and variants of typefaces between italic
Yeah,
and
I mean, let's
the
just look at
weight
this.
and the width. Like you can do so much with that, and it's beautiful, and it's really expressive, and you know exactly which thing is more important than something else. And you know, especially like a magazine like oh gosh, like any of the fashion magazines, a lot of like things like Vanity Fair
Mhm.
is a really good example. But even if you like that New York magazine right there,
New York magazine.
that's like sort of at the bottom.
Did I go past it? Where am I?
It's just next to Esquire in the bottom row. It's like half covered
Ah,
down. There you go. So like if you look at what's going on the right hand side there, there's a whole bunch of different weights going on there,
Mhm.
and that's like not even getting really crazy about it. But there's probably like 6 or 7 different weights of text going on there. Oh, that is a fucking terrible page.
that is pretty rough. Why can't I zoom in? Let me zoom in. But yeah, so it's, you know, we've got there's
Yeah,
interesting things going on. So there's like this.
There's a rhythm in like size and weight and
Mhm.
color. You know, there's just more stuff going on. Like this is maybe not even the best example, but um I don't know, like anything that you typically see in the checkout aisle, like Cosmopolitan or anything
Mhm.
like that. Those are really good examples where there'll be this huge variation. Like the Elle magazine one that you just scrolled past is another good example. So
Yeah,
like,
here's a good one. So like
so
these are all the same font face, but this one's italic, this one is bold, this one is condensed, this is thin. At least I think
yeah,
they're
so
the
like
same
you've got
font.
all kinds of stuff going on there. We can do things like that. We can actually build some of that control into our CMS and let somebody play around with that as they're making stuff to go in the cards on the homepage, or like whatever other
Mhm.
design system shit we're doing. You know, I mean, like that's like all. You know, we can put design back into the publishing process on the web.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
and
I'm
that's
really excited about that. And you know, like I remember I did a website way back in the day for a client, and what we wanted to do was replicate. We wanted to replicate the look of a magazine cover as his homepage, and we did it, but it was super hacky, and it wasn't like I don't know. It didn't have that same feel, you know. Like if
right,
you took a screenshot of it and you printed it out, it looked like a magazine cover. But when you used it on the web, it was kind of like, nah.
right.
And so I think there's this opportunity now, like the technology is caught up to the desire, where we're able to go in and do these really immersive
Yeah.
experiences. And I think I'm very excited about that. I think it's to quote Aladdin, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, go back over to CodePen. There, I have a few more examples of stuff like that with variable fonts that you can have a lot of fun with.
Heck yeah, let's do it. All right. So
Uh, not here. If you go or view all pens.
view all pens.
All right, so keep going down.
No, this
These
will
are
work.
like I've
This will
got a
work.
few examples.
Yes.
Sorry, that's a little chaos happened. What were you trying to get me to look
No,
at?
no worries. Keep going. There's more stuff from the talks that I've been doing lately. So next page, I think they're on this one.
Ooh,
There
this
we
is
go.
kind of cool.
Uh, yeah, go to that one. So this is using one that has a width and weight axis. This one is Univer for monotype, and if you switch the view of this, so this is like a fairly narrow screen view. Now, if you look at it here, it's using CSS columns.
How do I pop this thing out to a? I'm gonna pop this out.
There we go. And so I've done a few things. Like I've told the CSS to just break it in there and let the words in the title just break wherever they need to. It's using CSS columns. So if you actually just command minus the shit out of that.
Oh, nice.
So it just keeps changing. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that. And it's picking some stuff out that I think is kind of interesting. It's got an accent color, it's got a drop cap, it's got a styled first line in that paragraph, and it's reusing one of those images as a background up top. So, and then it's just adding like a gradient overlay on that.
Yeah.
So like it's more interesting. Like that's the whole thing. Is like this is a more interesting thing to read. And maybe like the columns don't work on really long passages of text because then you'd be like scrolling up and down, but that's fine. You could do it with a shorter passage of text and still make a more interesting layout out of that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. So we got about 5 minutes left before we need to break down, and what I'd really like to do is show some of the more artistic uses of variable fonts that aren't really like practical, but more like abusing what variable fonts are for. Where should I go to look at those?
Go search CodePen and Mandy Michael.
CodePen, Mandy Michael.
She has so many good experiments.
All right, so let's see. This one's cool. It's ambient light, but that's not what we're here for.
So
what are some of your favorites?
Classic is like grass growing. So this is using Decovar.
Okay.
And she's just animating this through different axes. Like it's just another one of those like super crazy ones that.
Oh, let me turn off her animation so that we can actually play with it. Where is the animation?
Just delete everything inside the JavaScript window.
Is it not? It's not just this? Okay, so that should... I think now we can just play with it. So if I take this, then we can do things like, yeah, we can make it a little bit smaller, but then we can play with the line height. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's
like
the weird stuff.
The inlining, so we can add like that's very cool in and of itself. But then this, I think, is where it gets really interesting. So we can like change the angle of the font.
Notice the ends
like up
of
here.
like the joints, the end of the stroke.
Yeah,
you can make it more or less rounded.
That's very cool. Round it off for real, which is super fun.
So a little history, like Decovar and Amstelvar were created by David Berlow and Type Network and Google as examples of what this typeface can do, what this format can do. So it is intentionally crazy with the amount of stuff that you can play with.
So you can add like all of this fun. So inline. Oh, and when you inline this, it follows the like grass kind of stuff. Yep. And then we've got worms. That's really fun. Yeah, let's give it a bunch of weight.
So there are a lot of other fun ones. If you want to like go check out some of the other pens that she has, there's like other typefaces that are really really fun. So just click to see all of her pens.
Okay.
And so if
close that
you
down.
check out, let's see, go to the next screen. I mean, like there's a lot of fun ones here, but I wanted to show you. Well, the audio one is pretty cool. So if you go to that one and you start making some noise,
Click
click
to
to start
start.
that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yell at it.
Hello. Oh, that's fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So this, I mean, like, how great is that? That you can do something like that. That you can, just play. I love the idea of play on the web, and it's something that, I feel like people like Sarah Vieira, Sarah Drasner, we're seeing Mandy do it here. Just this idea of building things that don't have a strict purpose, but that when you see them, your heart just immediately breaks into it. Like it's like ear to ear smile as soon as you see it. Like, oh, what a great idea! Like, how fun is that? And I want to do more of that. Like, I feel like I don't play enough.
Well, and I think when we play, then we start to figure out what are the things that we could do. So like Mandy's done stuff with device rotation, and so with the accelerometer,
Yeah.
like integrating with that. She's done stuff with ambient light.
Yeah, this is
So
another one.
if you
Wait, how do I do this? I gotta.
you have to basically cover over your camera.
Yeah, but I think it's this.
That's where the light sensor is up at the top edge of your laptop.
Is it this one? Which I think this one might not be working for me because I've got like multiple cameras set up.
Yeah, that
so
could be.
go play with that one on
go to
your own.
Go to the next page. There's a cool one. Oh, where is it? Keep going.
Layout demos.
She did one with Chi that I was trying to find. There we go. Ooze.
Ooze here, or which one?
The middle one.
Middle one. Got it.
I think the other one's playing around dark mode, but there we go.
Oh, that's fun.
So that's a variable axis.
Okay.
So let's play with the axes on this one.
All right. So I'm going to turn the
inspect that
animation
one.
off. Great. And now I can control it. So let's take these. We'll make this bigger. I'm going to inspect this and. No fonts used on the current element. Did it?
Just go back to the H1.
I thought I was on the H1.
There's one above it. There's an H1 right above it.
Ah, got
There
it.
you go.
Okay.
There it is.
So let's turn.
I think she was using the other one for some animation effects.
Okay, but how do I get you to stop highlighting? I would like for you to stop that.
Just hover over it again and then it'll stop.
What's going on? What's going on, Firefox? Cut me a break here. Oh, I clicked a thing. That's my fault. Okay. So we've got.
Scroll down there. There you go. You've got yeast and gravity.
Oh, but check this
Like
out.
you can have.
So it's like bounced. It doesn't. There's not a grade. It's like a straight bounce from font to font size, which is kind of cool.
Well, it doesn't actually have a weight axis, so that's actually synthesis going on there.
Oh, interesting.
But-
So what's the default?
I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Play with the ones down below.
Fine. Jeez. Yeast. So it rises. That's funny. Gravity. Fascinating. God, this is
And
a fun
temperature
font.
is the melting effect.
What
So you
a
could
super fun font. Holy.
so you could have like total 70s fun horror
Yeah.
movies. Like things bounce. Like you can have so much fun with this.
Yeah, this is a ton of fun. I
Yeah.
very much enjoy this.
So this is from Ono Type. And like this, the thing that I love about this is it's all the small foundries and individuals that are playing with this stuff.
Yeah.
and it's just amazing. Like, you check out the variable fonts hashtag on Twitter, and you will see so many people experimenting with cool things.
Wait, you're not gonna let me just search? Oh, fine. Let's go look at Mandy one more time. So this is whose stuff we've just been looking at. Thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate it. Timing's a little bit weird. We're about to wrap up, but we're gonna raid someone else. So stay tuned, and we'll keep the love going. So let's look at variable fonts, and that's
So Fontsmith just launched a site with 10 of them available. Axis Praxis is a great site to play with stuff.
twerking. Good. All right.
Oh,
So
this is a good one.
the stuff that I've been blown away by.
Yes.
Is like, this is a font. That's a freaking
Yeah.
font.
Oh yeah, go to Type Archer's profile. Like, they've got so many awesome things there.
Okay, so that one we just looked at.
Yep.
And is this
Yeah, keep
this is a
scrolling
color
down. There's
font,
one-
right?
Yep.
That's why that works, is because it's
Yep.
okay. That's not a font.
It is.
It's so cool.
So keep scrolling down. There's one that is just like so fucking hilarious. This one there. So somebody tweeted back, and is actually one of the people that really did a lot of work in figuring out this format in the first place.
Yeah.
And his response was, "Yeah, that's pretty much what the internals of the font file looks like."
Yeah, I mean, this is incredible. It's such a cool, like, all of this is just, it's like a new art form, which I really love.
Yeah.
And it's
I mean,
never something that I would have expected to become an art form. Oh, because I mean, okay, let me take that back, because I need to apologize to the type designers who are about to come after me. Typography has always been an art, but like, this is different. This is like abusing typography to create art pieces that are ostensibly fonts. And I think that is such a fascinating way to use this medium.
Well, if you think about like what you could do with an icon font, like, think about like what you could do with like optical size, so that as the icon is shown smaller, you actually change the level of detail.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, so like all of those things could work together and make icon fonts a lot more usable than they are presently.
Oh, and like, look at this. But what I love, but the other thing that's really amazing is, like, I love the idea of being able to put in a drop cap that is typography. So if you select it, you're not like getting a word minus the first letter, but it could be animated. And so, you know, if I had a piece of text that starts with the letter A, then, you know, if you're like telling a story and it's a long, long time ago, you would be able to start this by having this curtain down, and the curtain raises, and then you're reading a story. And that's just such an amazingly engaging way to do this without breaking it. You're not like shoehorning an image in and then having to find some way to hide it off the screen so that you can make the text selectable. It's like you're just using the platform to do amazing things. And I really, really, really love when you can do this fun, playful stuff without breaking the experience for the default browser.
Right. It's really good stuff. And you know, I wanted to throw in one more thing before we're totally out of time, because you had brought up the idea of subsetting, and kind of this sort of ties in a little bit there. One of the problems that I see right now is there are a bunch of people selling variable fonts, and they're giving them to you in a TTF format.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one that you can technically use on the web, but it's not optimal.
Right.
But it's also something you can install on the desktop. So that's kind of why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to encourage type designers and foundries to make sure they're offering a WAF 2, which is what you should be using.
Because that's significantly more compressed, right?
Right. And you know, the same thing goes. The thing is, technically, in most cases, if you convert it yourself, you're probably violating the license. Whether or not that makes sense is irrelevant, but that's generally the rule.
Sure.
And the same thing would go for subsetting. And a lot of the subsetting tools might end up breaking the variable axis anyway.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting idea because like I'd never really thought of because we run a lot of our fonts through subsetting as part of the build process, right? That's just a thing that you plug in. And by doing that, we're technically violating licenses, is what you're saying?
In most cases, yes.
Whoops.
I mean, if you're using commercial fonts, any alteration of that file is an alteration of software. So you do need to be really careful about that.
Oh, okay. So that's a thing to think about. Yeah. So that's very, very cool.
So
Kind of concerning.
will
Something
say-
that but it sounds like something that we can solve. It's just a matter of like
Well-
awareness, right?
Yes, and I think in general, the first thing you want to do is go back and talk to the foundry where they came from, and like talk to them about what you're trying to do, and it's quite likely that reasonable people will be reasonable.
Yeah.
And that's just say like not everyone is going to be reasonable, but a lot of people will be.
And there's a huge difference between saying like I want to modify your font for it's going to look different, or I'm going to use it in a way that it's not intended for, versus I'm using your font. I want to pay for it. I just want my site to be performant. Like that's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And in truth, a lot of times oftentimes what you need is a subset of a particular character set.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they can provide that. So that's part of the solution is to actually get a font file that includes the things that you need in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That will probably be smaller than what you'd be able to do on your own because they can actually do it properly with the right font tools.
Gotcha.
And so that's one part of it. If it's an open source font, it's all's fair. That's totally fine. And some people, some type designers and foundries are more permissive when they know that you're simply trying to make your site run fast. They don't really want to get in the way. In some cases, they don't really want to do the extra work either. So they may be totally fine with it. But everyone should just be aware, like, fonts are hard to make. So that's why there are licensing rules about it to protect that property.
Got it.
And in general, most people want to be reasonable. Starting out with that premise that people don't want to be a dick, like that's a reasonable way to go through life.
Mm-hmm.
If they prove you otherwise, then, go about your day. Just don't talk to them anymore.
For sure, yeah.
Don't, like, as the poster from P98A says, don't be an asshole, don't work with assholes. That's, generally good advice.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, well, with that, I think we're out of time. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Where should people go to find you? Like we've looked at your site a lot today, rwt.io. Let me throw another link to that in the chat. Let's do that. And we also looked at your Twitter. Anywhere else that you want people to check out?
Well, if like the code and all that other random shit just bores you and you just want to see pictures of dogs, then just check me out on Instagram. That's how most people know me. It's really about the dogs.
Is it J Pamental?
It is J Pamental everywhere. Or J Pamental if you want to pronounce it more like I would, but that's fine either way.
But wait, say it again. Pamental?
Pamental. Yep.
Wow, I've been saying your name wrong for 10 years.
Yeah, everybody does. It's cool.
I'm the worst,
Don't worry
man.
about it.
I thought we were friends, and here I am proving myself wrong. Look at these dogs, though.
They're pretty awesome.
Those
That's Tristan on the right and Tilly on the left. They're cousins.
Those are very good dogs. Yeah, let's go follow those dogs. All right, y'all. It's been great. Stay tuned. We're going to raid. Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We will... Let's see.
It has been my pleasure.
Dude, yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for all the fun comments, too.
Yeah, thanks, chat. It's always a good time. We will see you next time.
All right. Peace.